Positive news for Edward Cabrera, seemingly currently listed as day-to-day. No structural issues following that MRI scan. More updates on the Marlins rotation. It feels like the rotation headed into opening day, subject to any further injuries, is now set. Max Meyer, option to AAA before today's game. Tons to get into. Rotation shaping up. This is Locked on Marlins.
You are Locked on Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings from England and welcome to Locked on Marlins. It's your daily Marlins pod. I'm your host, Peter Pratt. Hit me up, of course, at Miami Marlins _UK. If you listen to the pod, of course, hit subscribe. It's your team every day. Thanks for making Locked on Marlins your first listen of the day. Perhaps you're joining me straight after the Tuesday spring game. Let me just check in on this one. How did this one end? Nevertheless, there is a YouTube channel. Make sure you hit subscribe there too. Yes, the game has ended. 9-1. 9-1 to the Astros. The Marlins spanked 9-1. Jesus Luzardo taking the L. Tons to get into, though, on today's episode. The rotation seemingly is set for opening day at this point. Eddie Cabrera updates. We got a Max Meyer transaction, Troy Johnston transaction, and a Tim Anderson boomba. Equally, we got some Nick Gordon speed. He's looking like a really interesting toolsy player for this Marlins roster into 2024. Tons to get into, guys. It's thick and fast in spring, of course. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. You go to prizepicks.com/lockedonmlb and use the code, all lowercase, lockedonmlb for a first deposit match up to $100. All right, guys, like I mentioned, we got a packed schedule. So my words to minute ratio seems like it's up. Could be that I've had 3 coffees today. It's not yet. It's not even 9 p.m. I've had 3 coffees, 3 doubles, 3 double espressos, including a bit of milk, the latte vibes. Is anyone else using an espresso machine at home? This wasn't on the agenda or the rundown, but boy, oh boy, those Nespresso machines are the best investment you can make. Like the coffee that comes out, top drawer, the milk frother, of which I use some of this like coconut barista milk thing. Like it's probably combined, it costs like 45p a go, which is like, I don't know, 60 cents, maybe 65 cents. I'm thinking this is coffee house quality. I'm addicted to them. I'm addicted to them. Anyway, I didn't expect to start talking about my Nespresso machine, but I must say, highly recommended. I hope Nespresso are a sponsor and Locked On real soon. Anyway, let's talk about the rotation, because in advance of today's game, 2 major bits of news that pertain to the Marlins rotation. And now I get a sense that we've got a really good view of what that could look like. Clearly, we are, 2 weeks away from opening day, just over. Things can change. Things change rapidly. We've seen that with Eddie Cabrera. Got onto the mound. Things are progressing well. Next thing is exits. Doesn't throw a pitch. All of a sudden, things are in doubt. So from a rotation perspective, I think where we're up to right now, just to bring everyone up to speed, Jesus Luzardo, Eury Perez, AJ Puck, seemingly the 1, 2, 3 that were nailed on. You've then got Trevor Rogers, that after yesterday's performance, really impressive. There was a piggyback situation there. Trevor Rogers heading into Max Meyer. 3 innings from Max Meyer, great to see. But Trevor Rogers into the rotation seemingly. And Ryan Weathers seemingly has forced his way in, which is the right thing. Like Ryan Weathers has had an unbelievable spring. He is literally like, there's jobs to be, won. And Weathers has won one. Like, there's no other way of framing this one. I don't think he's had an earned run yet. Oh, no, he's had a couple of earned runs for Ryan Weathers, but still just under 14 innings worth of work with a 1.32 ERA, 17 Ks. He's pacing the organization. It's great to see. So Ryan Weathers had one hell of a spring, and he's earned his spot. Let's go to the news, though, because this is why I'm feeling confident about this 5. And reminder on the 5, Luzardo, Eury Perez, AJ Puck, Trevor Rogers, and Ryan Weathers. That's, in my opinion, your 5 barring any further injuries at this point. Why am I so confident in this? Firstly, Eddie Cabrera. Let's talk about him. We had an update. The update was positive. Eddie Cabrera, equally on Instagram or some social media app, I believe it's Instagram, too old for this, he was posting out that it was good vibes, positive vibes in terms of what he saw. I think he had like a CD. Yes, there's still CDs in production, seemingly. A CD, obviously with probably the results of the scan, the MRI associated with the shoulder. A shoulder impingement, I believe, is the official situation, and day to day. So with Eddie Cabrera at this point, the initial reaction was, this is probably going to be an IL stint, and then you're probably looking at a month to 6 weeks before he returns to big league action. That's, if there has to be like a full shutdown situation, then a build back up situation. It's going to be very interesting to see with Eddie Cabrera in the next few days, 5 days, let's say. Does Eddie Cabrera, is he actually throwing still? That's the question. At this point, with day-to-day, which is the prognosis, which, nothing scares me more than the Marlins saying day-to-day, to be honest with you. But I'm going to take the positives in that it was day-to-day. Eddie Cabrera seems positive about this situation, which is great. Does Eddie throw in the next few days? If he does, then maybe there is a way that Eddie Cabrera can make it back and miss a stint on the IL. It feels a little bit unlikely at this stage, considering, we're a couple of weeks out. He's missed his turn in the rotation. Let's see how this plays out. So gut feel is there probably is the league, the minimum stint on the IL for Eddie Cabrera, kind of best case. So we missed the first 2 weeks of baseball for him. So that's the first update. In many ways, it's a positive update. Things could have been a lot worse. We don't know the severity at this point, and we don't know what this means for Eddie in terms of his throwing program. Is it full shutdown? If it is, it's probably like missing a month by the time you incorporate, 2 weeks plus the next extra 4, 6 weeks maybe down till he returns. So, the Marlins depth, pitching depth is being tested. It's being tested. Spoke about it, a lot through the offseason, clearly. Should they trade? Should they trade pitching depth? Do they have the depth? All these questions. Right now, it looks like the Marlins have assembled a competent roster, one that is weighted more heavily into their pitching staff. Fine. And the offense, I think, still has some deficiencies. They're still talking to JD Martinez, maybe. We'll see if they're maybe talking to JD Davis as well. There's multiple JDs in the mix. So we'll see. JD Davis waived by the Giants. No one claimed him. He's been released. He was in his final arbitration year. He doesn't get that money. So there's no league minimum situation for JD. Like if he now can negotiate as a free agent, I guess much like if he would have been non-tendered, let's say. So JD Davis out in the open market. Let's see. Sounds like from what the reporting I'd seen earlier on, like up to 7 teams interested in JD Davis. And why not? Why not? Considering the Marlins were interested in Gio Urshela, like the Marlins should be interested in JD Davis, to be honest with you. Like there's a really interesting fit here. But that doesn't, you don't get away from the fact that the Marlins should still be interested in JD Martinez too. So what's to say that the Marlins don't double down on JDs, Davis and Martinez? Imagine if you could get both of them for $12 million combined. 12 mil combined. 1-year deals, maybe. I think that would be an absolute stunner for the Fish and would be, there'd be a lot of value in that. How you'd shake the roster up would be very interesting. As I've already said, if JD Martinez signs, have his sales done. The question would be is if JD Davis also signed, how would they squeeze him onto this roster considering there's nowhere for Brujan to go or Nick Gordon seemingly. So the Marlins at that point would have to make a decision around, do they potentially move on from Brujan? All indicators were suggesting that, they were liking Brujan. Skip Schumacher talking about it. I have to say that Brujan, in terms of like the Winter League, was getting me really excited. And kind of through spring, I haven't really seen much of Brujan, to be honest with you. He's kind of flown under the radar a touch. Like, he's had 16 at-bats and he's hitting 250. It's fine. No stolen bags, though, from Brujan. Like, it's been okay, but like Nick Gordon's probably stole the limelight a touch more. Hitting 300. I think it was his fourth stolen bag. I'm looking at the stats here. I don't think they've been updated with today's numbers. I think that's his fourth stolen bag. So, Nick Gordon, he's playing in some center field as well. Looks nice at center. For me, he's having a real nice spring. Bruhan, kind of fine, but a bit labored, but seemingly Skip's liking him. Anyway, the point I'm making here is if JD Davis signs, then the Marlins have got a real decision to make with Bruhan specifically, in my opinion, because Birdie's nailed on. Nick Gordon, in my opinion, nailed on. The backup catcher, nailed on. And, they're going to need an outfielder of sorts as well. Someone else to be, Avi in some ways could be nailed on, but he shouldn't be. Anyway, we'll see how this goes. The other big news from today, Max Meyer. We're going to talk about Max Meyer straight after the first ad and the way the Marlins have handled him. And is it the right approach in terms of the way they've handled Max Meyer? Before we do that, let's get into our first ad of the day. It's our good friends over at PrizePicks. Yes, sir. And we've got some sexy graphics for these boys, which is great. Guys, PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. And it's the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Football season may be over, but the action on the floor is heating up. Whether it's tournament season or the fight for playoff home court, there's no shortage of high-stakes basketball moments this time of the year. Get in on the excitement with PrizePicks, America's #1 fantasy sports app, where you can turn your hoops knowledge into serious cash. And you can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. Yes, you heard that right. You can turn $10 into 1,000 with NBA, NHL, and college basketball entries today on PrizePicks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. So what have you got to do? You got to download the app today, and you've got to use the code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Reminder, download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONMLB. It's all lowercase, by the way, LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, pick more, pick less. It's that easy. All right, guys, back here with me, Peter Pratt, on Tuesday, the 12th of March. We're edging closer to opening day, aren't we? We're getting close. It's in touching distance. Roster cuts are happening. Guys are being optioned, reassigned. There's a lot going on. The Marlins, as well as other clubs, having to make decisions, starting to prioritize at-bats for guys that really need them. And we're getting into that point of spring now where, earlier on, you maybe get an inning, an at-bat or two, and then the back ends of the games, there's a lot of minor league dudes, which is fine. You're into it now where the guys are staying in the games longer. And some of these, numbers start to look real. The pitchers you're facing, higher quality. The hitters you're facing, higher quality. Big test yesterday for Trevor Rogers, by the way. I'm going to talk about Max Meyer in a sec, but it was a big test. He came through it great. Trevor Rogers looking real nice. And Max Meyer piggybacked it. Looked real nice. So great to see Max piggybacking it against a pretty stacked up Mets lineup, to be honest with you. It was really encouraging to see. Kind of epitomizes the Marlins spring too. A 1-0 win. That's been the Marlins all over this spring. Like overall, the Marlins only put up 1 run today. The offensive categories for the Marlins in spring have been by far by far. Offensively, and as a group, as a collective, they are miles away from the other clubs. It's only spring, so it doesn't matter. Don't panic. No need to panic. But like I said, this spring has all been about the pitching. There's been a lot of storylines going on with spring. A lot of storylines to track. A lot of people closely watching Max Meyer, for example. And as things have played out, as Braxton Garrett's got hurt, as Eddie Cabrera's got hurt, Puck's transition to the rotation, is that going to work? Don't know. Is Trevor Rogers going to make his comeback? Can you count on Trevor? Don't know. Tons of questions. As this has been ticking along, you've had Ryan Weathers going bananas, and separately, Max Meyer just going about his business. He hasn't been working as a starter. He's been working later in the games, there's a starter and then Max would come in, or he'd come in later in the game and he'd throw a couple of innings. In terms of his pitches and the pitch counts, etc., they're in line with the starter. So he's still being worked up and stretched out as a starter. I think it's really interesting, though, that they've kept him out of an actual start, let's say. They've kept their rotation intact, and Max Meyer, out of that. They're probably easing him in. Like I've already mentioned, in some of these early spring games, after the first bat or two, you're into some depth dudes pretty quickly. And so, it's good for Max, confidence-wise, to not have to go up against a loaded offense and get blown up. Next thing is he gives up multi-home runs like Jesus Luzardo. For Luzardo, it's, dusted off, right? Who cares? Who cares? But for Max Meyer, you not to say that he's not on, he's lacking confidence, because I don't believe he is lacking confidence. Nevertheless, you protect him. You put him in situations to succeed. That's the role of Skip Schumacher. That's the role of the Marlins. Build him back up slowly at his own pace and give him the best opportunity to succeed. Speaking of that opportunity, what that means to Max Meyer is he's been optioned today, which I think is interesting. The timing's interesting as well, considering the news around Eddie Cabrera and, he's optioned to AAA. I don't actually know what in the next couple of weeks, what Max Meyer will be doing. I actually know that. Will he still be throwing in games? Is there AAA practice games going on? Maybe there is. Maybe there is. I'm not against this for the Marlins in taking it cautiously with Max. But from what we've seen in spring, Max is effectively the next guy up. And what we've already seen in spring across the whole of the league is a pitching injury is just around the corner. At any moment, one of these guys will go down and they're down for a month or longer. At any moment, the amount of injuries that the pitchers are sustaining at this point is just wild. Wild. And it feels unsustainable, to be honest with you. I think back to the NFL, and they had a situation where the quarterbacks were, years ago, were just getting obliterated. And next thing is, it impacts the league. It affects the league. It affects the product on the field. If all of your franchise QBs are off the field, because the backups are nowhere near as good. And the games then become less impressive as a spectacle because, well, you'll just hand it off and dink and dunk it around. That's fine. But that's not what people are there to watch. The NFL had to make some adjustments. They had to make some adjustments to protect their guys. Major League Baseball's got a problem at the moment. Too many pitchers are getting hurt for too long. Tommy John surgeries are so commonplace at this point. So commonplace. Baseball and pitching generally, just what's being asked of these guys is unsustainable, clearly. Unsustainable. And something's got to change. Something's got to change because, these injuries are so severe that it's like a year, 18 months out of the game. And it may not be just one stint. It may be multiple TJs. It's kind of, it's been accepted as part of the game, but does Major League Baseball need to find a way to make some adjustments here and protect these guys and protect their product? I get it. Some may think, well, this is good for the offense because we haven't got to face Sandy Alcantara. We can face Ryan Weathers instead. Wrong. Ryan Weathers, he's an ace too. Anyway, but from a Yankees perspective, let's talk about that. Wait to see the news on Garrett Cole, but doesn't sound good. Doesn't look good. You know it, right? Elbow soreness, MRI scan, no information feeding from the club. We all know how this ends up. Ends up with Cole out for the year. Yankees are panicking. The rotation didn't look amazing anyway, considering what they've got on the offensive side and what they've done with Soto. They're all in. They're all in. It just shows you how quickly things can change for one organization. The pitching depth is so king. Max Meyer is the next guy up for the Marlins. He's done everything right in spring, to be honest with you. I've been really encouraged by his numbers. Although, again, I feel like the numbers aren't quite as good as it meets the eye, if that makes sense. I feel like the numbers are slightly, giving you an impression of Max Meyer and who he is and what he can be at the big league level. There's still some room for growth there with Max. It's all about that third pitch. We know the slider, but I've talked about it quite a few times. Like I look at Spencer Strider and I see the changes that he's making this spring. Like Strider's looking unreal. Like Max can get there too. Max Meyer can get there as well. It's going to take time. The Marlins need to nurture him. But like I said, one little ding. Next thing is, like, all of a sudden, Luzardo had a bit of a velo dip. We're like, oh, what's happening with Jesus Luzardo? Eury Perez has already broken a fingernail. He's one ding away from being back up. So, Meyer down. Me personally, I've spoke about it quite a bit. I could see a role for Meyer in the bullpen immediately. Like, you just get him in, and there's going to be a need in the pen for multi-inning guys. Multi-inning guys. Skip Schumacher spoke about it yesterday. The fact that the way this rotation shaping up and the needs will likely be that there's like multi-bolt guys in there. Soriano can do it. Hoeing can do it. We'll wait to see. Like this pen, I don't think we've really focused. I say me. I haven't focused enough on the pen. I need to deep dive on this pen. So we're going to do that. Looks like Max Meyer won't be a part of the pen. They're going to keep him in AAA, ready to rock and roll. Is that the right decision? Probably yes, because the reality is now with Eddie, with Brax, these situations, you need Max to be ready because he's going to be needed probably within the first month, in all likelihood. That's not to say I'm wishing injuries on anyone. It's not the case. I'm just seeing what's happening for the Marlins and around the league. Every day, there's a pitcher going down. And the Marlins have already seen two of them. They've already had another problem with Eury Perez. Like, it's just a matter of when, not if, with these guys. That's what I mentioned about Zach Wheeler and his contract a few weeks ago. The fact that 3 years, $120 million. The reality is, the Phillies will probably only see 2 of the 3 years of that because one of them will probably have TJ because that's just what the probability says, which is crazy. I want to talk about Tim Anderson. I also want to talk about Troy Johnson as well, but let's do the final ad of the day. Then we'll come back to those guys very shortly. Interesting news for both. Before we do that, let you know about our good friends over at Amazon Fire TV. Yes, sir. And Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball, that's coming soon, or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels let you dive into all the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on all the latest world of sports. March Madness, NBA, MLB, and lots more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, and cooking videos as well. Get them cooking videos. Hopefully there's a Kim Ang cooking video in there too. She could cook, baby. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. To learn more, visit amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. All right, guys, final segment with me, Peter Pratt, on Tuesday, the 12th of March. We're talking rotation. It's set. Luzardo, Eury, AJ Puck. It's working. AJ Puck, Ryan Weathers, Trevor Rogers. That's your 5. Eddie Cabrera, he's avoided serious injury. We'll wait to see if it's an IL stint and how long an IL stint it could be. Max Meyer optioned. So the Marlins sending him down to AAA already at this point. Optioned. Interesting, considering he's looked good, but he is the next guy up. We talked about Nick Gordon and his production thus far in spring. It's been encouraging from Nick Gordon. I've been really excited. Like there's an extremely versatile dude in there in Nick Gordon, for sure. There's some speed there. There's some defensive prowess. He's looked pretty good in center. He played a little bit of second base yesterday. Nick Gordon's going to be asked to play everywhere. It's looked impressive. It's been a really encouraging start, considering the return Stephen Okert, who frankly I was out on, considering the way he ended last year. Let's talk about 2 other offensive guys, then we'll get out of here. Troy Johnston. also has been optioned down to AAA as well today. So boy, oh boy, the Marlins just like pilfering this roster. Some big headline names, I would say, Troy Johnston being one, Griffin Conine the other. To be fair, both of those guys in particular have had nice springs, it's fair to say. So Troy Johnston, let's not forget here, he was an absolute stud at AAA last year. He rolled his ankle pretty early in spring, made his way back. He ends up having 14 plate appearances and hitting 357 overall, 802 OPS. So listen, Troy Johnston did everything he possibly could this spring for sure. There's 4 RBIs in there too. I don't think there was no home runs, no triples, no doubles either. So, just a lot of singles. It's basically Luis Arias. Troy Johnston, it's effectively Luis Arias that plays a bit of first base. Maybe that's where he'll end up too. Griffin Conine equally had a decent spring too. Home run in there for Griff as well. A pretty stereotypical one for Griff, where he's hitting 222, a 722 OPS. Includes a bomb in there as well in his time. 18 at-bats overall. It's kind of what we expect from Conine, to be honest. So, he's done what you expect of him. He's in the Marlins' minds, I would say. There's a decent shot that we see Griffin Conine at some point in 24. I think we will. I think we'll see multiple home runs at the big league level from Griffin Conine at some point in 24. We'll see multiple strikeouts too. It's just the profile. But both Troy Johnston and Griffin Conine done themselves no harm. Optioned, okay, is what it is. We're prioritizing at-bats for the guys that are definitely going to be on the roster. Troy Johnston specifically, he's been a topic of discussion all offseason because is he going to be protected? Is he not? No, he's not. Is he going to be making the roster this spring? They bring in Mancini, kind of saying, we're not really in on Troy. Nevertheless, Troy Johnston, he's done all he can in spring. At this point, he's one of the next guys up based on the roster, the depth. We'll see how things go. But again, we will probably see Troy Johnston at some point, in 24, and he'll have his opportunity. The problem I have with Troy Johnston really is I just want to see a bit more than his stick profile at first base. It's just not enough at first base specifically. I feel like Josh Bell and Jake Burger, those stereotypical dudes, the Marlins need to have something like that in a few of these spots. And I feel like first base, definitely, particularly if they're going to use this rotating DH, you've got to have some thump somewhere. And I just look at Troy Johnston, there's not enough thump. So we'll see what the future holds for him. A lot of people are really high on him, really like him. I'm not super high on Troy Johnston. I'm not. It's not that I'm not super high. I know the Marlins aren't. And so I haven't really spent a lot of time talking about him because it's clear the Marlins aren't high by the way they're managing him. He could have been added to the roster. He hasn't been. Could have been protected. He wasn't. No one else wanted to select him. That kind of shows you where Troy Johnston is in a lot of people's minds. Yeah, he can hit 350 at AAA, but without really much power, much else. I don't know. It just feels a touch limited overall in terms of what I'd expect from that position. That's kind of why I'm just a little bit down on him. A guy I'm not down on, and a guy that the Mets fans were down on was Tim Anderson, giving him the overrated chance yesterday. Tim Anderson then took one first pitch opposite field with the smoothest, flattest, sexiest swing I've seen in a long time. Tim Anderson absolutely caressed one for a home run. It was beautiful. It was glorious. Really was. And when I think of Tim Anderson, I think more of that aggressiveness at the plate. But this opposite field knock was beautiful. It was just perfectly timed. It looked fully under control. Really encouraging from Tim Anderson. Spoke about Tim Anderson a lot in the last couple of weeks for obvious reasons. For me, defensively, he has to be there. And offensively, it won't be any worse than either Joey Wendell or his year that he had last year. From what we've seen thus far with Tim Anderson, it's encouraging. Encouraging, to be honest with you. The interesting bit as well, I was looking at the at-bat counts and where the Marlins are sitting right now. This is before today's stats, but I didn't realize that Avisail Garcia was pacing the club in at-bats headed into today. He's hitting 160. Jake Burger, actually, the same number of at-bats at 25. So both these guys, 25 at-bats. hitting 160. Jake Burger's had a really poor spring, actually. His OPS is 360. Burger struggled. Josh Bell actually has had a pretty poor spring as well. I look at these guys, like the guys that are expected to be a big part of the roster, Arias, Burger, and Bell. Arias starting to get things going a touch recently, which has been encouraging. But yeah, and Avi thrown in there. Like if Avi's going to be on this roster, like that's 4 of the guys that you need to be doing something. And they've been pretty underwhelming so far, which is kind of the root of the problems the Marlins have had. Their standout performers have been, like Tristan Gray really early, OPS in at 898, Tristan Gray, which probably paces the club. There's maybe someone that's got a rogue like 1,000 OPS. Actually, Dane Myers is over 1,000 OPS at this point. So well done, Dane. He's rolling. But yeah, offensively, it's fair to say it's been pretty discouraging for what we've seen in spring. But they've given plenty of at-bats to the guys that are going to be big parts of the lineup. It's not like, the Marlins' offensive numbers are putrid and it's because it's all no-name guys. Like, they've given a decent ample opportunity to many of the regulars. And at this point, they haven't really got it going. There's still plenty of time to go. I'm not overly panicking about spring. I'm pretty excited about what I've seen from a pitching side. And I feel like the rotation's set now at this point. I feel like Ryan Weathers has earned it. I've been really encouraged with AJ Puk and this transition. I feel like, the statement that's going to be made for every pitcher, if he stays healthy, Puk, he looks really nasty, really nasty. Trevor Rogers equally, like just getting him back. If you can get old Trevor back, it's a big, big, big plus for the Marlins. It's going to do it for today, guys. Thanks for joining me on Locked On Marlins and making it your first listen of the day. The rotation set. Eddie Cabrera misses out on serious injury. Max Meyer, optioned. Troy Johnston, optioned. Tim Anderson, his first home run for the Marlins. It was opposite field, and it was caressed off the back of some heckling from the Mets fans. So Mets, definitely. Nick Gordon flashing the speed. He has looked a real nice piece. It looks to be a big part of this roster. Appreciate you joining me today, guys. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.